Do you know exactly what you need to do in your business, but for some reason you just can't consistently execute it? You start the week strong, you got your plan in place, but by Wednesday, you're completely off track, reacting to fires and feeling like you're right back in chaos. I've coached hundreds of entrepreneurs the last 4 years, and anybody making between 5 to 10, 20 to 30 to 50K a month, even 100K a month plus individuals still struggle consistently showing up for the things that would actually get them to the next level. And here's the truth. It's not about discipline or motivation like everyone tells you. It's about finding the perfect morning routine. Nah, I'm kidding. It's not about that either, or downloading another productivity app. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why you're struggling with inconsistent execution and give you my exact 3-step framework to fix it permanently. I'm Luke Ganning. If you don't know who I am, I was a former growth partner at a 7-figure company. I host the Top 2% podcast, and I've been coaching entrepreneurs for the last 4 years. I've taken clients from 25K months to over 100K months, not by giving them more business strategy, but by helping them master consistent execution through what I call neuro productivity. And we help people stop self-sabotaging, ultimately. So here's the plan for today. First, I'm going to break down why traditional productivity advice completely fails entrepreneurs. Next, I'll show you the neuroscience behind why you're inconsistent. And then I'll give you the exact 3-step framework that's helped my clients move from frustrating inconsistency to reliable execution that actually grows their business. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your brain resists consistent execution, and you'll have a practical system to overcome it. That way you don't have to rely on motivation or discipline. So if you're serious about breaking through that ceiling in your business, make sure you watch this all the way through. And if you haven't subscribed already, go and fucking subscribe. Now, let me paint a picture for you. You start your Monday with clarity. You know exactly what needs to happen this week to move the needle in your business, and you got your priorities sorted, your calendar blocked, you're feeling motivated. Tuesday's pretty good. You knock out a few important tasks, but then something happens. Maybe a client issue pops up. Maybe you get stuck on a task that feels harder than what expected, or maybe you just wake up Wednesday feeling completely off. Suddenly now you're in a reactive mode. Your carefully planned week is now in shambles. You're putting out fires, you're responding to everyone else's priorities instead of your own, and those needle moving activities you promised yourself you do then been pushed to next week again. Sound familiar? I see this pattern with almost every entrepreneur I work with. Before they start working with me, they've tried everything: Pomodoro technique, time blocking, accountability partners, productivity apps, even stimulants, coffee, neurotropics, just to stay focused. But here's the problem with traditional productivity advice. It's designed for employees, not entrepreneurs. Most productivity systems assume you have a boss, you have fixed deadlines and a clear role. As an entrepreneur, you have none of that. You're the visionary, you're the implementer, you're the closer, you're the admin, you're the website builder. You're wearing all the hats. Now, traditional productivity advice doesn't account for the unique challenges of the entrepreneurial brain. And let me dispel the biggest myth right now. This is not about discipline. I've worked with military veterans, former athletes, some of the most disciplined people you'll ever meet, even someone who's a former Olympian, and they still struggled with a consistent execution in their business. And it's also not about motivation. And my most successful clients aren't motivated. They're not more motivated than you. They don't love every task they do. They aren't superhuman. They've just learned to work with their brain instead of against it. And what I've discovered through working with hundreds of entrepreneurs the last few years is that inconsistent execution has a specific pattern and specific triggers. And once you understand those, you can build systems that make consistency almost automatic, even if you struggle with it your entire life. So what's really going on here? Why is consistent execution so hard? Now, the answer might surprise you, but inconsistent execution isn't actually a productivity problem. It's an emotional regulation problem. So let that sink in for a second. When I first discovered that while working with clients, it completely transformed my approach. I'd been focusing on the wrong thing. I was trying to fix their calendars when I needed to fix the underlying chaos first. And in fact, I've now developed a framework that breaks down exactly what's happening when you struggle with consistent execution. I call it CHAOS, CHAOS. And it stands for the 5 root causes of inconsistent execution that I see in entrepreneurs making anywhere from 10 to 50K a month. Now, let me break it down for you. C stands for cognitive overload. Your entrepreneurial brain is juggling too much information, leading to decision fatigue. You're constantly switching between tasks, but nothing seems to get done because your focus is scattered. The real issue here isn't a lack of productivity tools. It's an inability to prioritize what truly matters versus what can wait or be delegated. And let's be honest, as entrepreneurs, what truly matters is what makes you the most money and what makes you the best version of yourself. I've worked with an agency owner who was constantly overwhelmed with client work, always feeling like he was constantly drowning in tasks. But when we dug deeper, we realized he was spending 80% of his time on clients that generated only 20% of his revenue, the classic 80-20 principle, while neglecting the high-value relationships that could actually grow his business. So that's where you could be as well. Now, H stands for habituated patterns. These are automatic, repeated behaviors like procrastination or perfectionism that keeps you stuck. You keep postponing tasks, telling yourself you'll start when you feel ready, but that moment never comes. You spend hours perfecting one email instead of sending out 10. You spend hours, thousands of hours on podcasts, listening to information about how you can create a perfect marketing plan or the best sales strategy or how to lead your team better, but without actually doing it. And these patterns feel comfortable because they're familiar, even though they're actually holding you back. Now, one client had a pattern of planning excessively, but never executing. He'd spend weeks just creating elaborate business ideas, but would find every reason to revise them rather than taking action. This is not about the plan. It's the habituated pattern of avoiding the discomfort of putting himself out there, of being seen, of being heard. Now, A stands for avoidance of emotions. This is huge. Fear, shame, anger, guilt, or anxiety trigger avoidance, which fuels distractions and prevents progress. You distract yourself with busy work or scrolling, avoiding the tasks that feels uncomfortable. You feel anxious about client calls. You feel anxious about getting the new hire in. You feel anxious about writing a SOP or writing a new system that's going to make your life easier because you're unfamiliar with it. Many entrepreneurs don't realize that they're doing this, but the emotional avoidance is killing your execution. Many entrepreneurs think they're just being productive by handling small tasks, but they're actually avoiding the emotional discomfort of more important activities like team building, like difficult conversation, like hiring team members, and these things cap your potential. Now, O stands for overcommitment. So taking on too much at once leads to exhaustion and chaos in your schedule. As entrepreneurs, we're optimists by nature. We think we can do it all. But when you say yes to everything, you're actually saying no to doing anything as well. Your energy gets diluted across way too many commitments, making consistent execution impossible. I see this constantly with business owners who are afraid to niche down or focus on one core offering, or they're just having constant ideas. Even Justin had so many different ideas, and the constant structure for me was just saying, no. This is what you need to do to get to 57K a month. This is what we need to do to get to 100K a month. It's just like, no, don't overcommit, stay the path. And I was the same. You know, I ran a podcast full time. I ran a coaching business full time. I ran a network marketing business full time. And having all three of those capped my ability. And the month that I stopped doing the network marketing and the podcast was the month that I went from 10K a month to 20K a month, just like that. Now, S stands for subconscious beliefs. These are deep-rooted thoughts like I'm not good enough, or I always fail, I'm a loser, I'm not worthy of accomplishments. These shape how you approach your tasks and decisions. These beliefs operate beneath your awareness. They will silently sabotage your efforts to be consistent. Now, you might even be aware of right now that you don't feel enough, or anytime you have a business win, you downplay it and you don't think that it's actually that good. But you have to realize that if you don't change these beliefs, they will shape how your experience has. If you're fearing something will happen right now, it likely will, because your thoughts equal your feelings, they equal your actions, and they equal your results. Now, the Chaos Framework explains why traditional productivity advice fails entrepreneurs, but most productivity systems only address the surface level systems, your calendar, your task list, your notifications, but they completely ignore the underlying causes, which is the emotional regulation problems, the habitual patterns, the subconscious beliefs. And here's what's crazy. When I help clients identify these root causes of chaos and address them first, their productivity issues often solve themselves, because it's not about forcing yourself to be more disciplined. It's about creating the right emotional state and environment for execution to happen naturally. Now, in this next section, I'll show you exactly how to address this with my 3-step Neuro Productivity Framework that tackles both the emotional and strategic element of consistent execution. Now, step 1 is emotional regulation first. The first step is absolutely critical, and it's the step that most productivity advice completely skips over. You have to regulate your emotions before you can regulate your actions. Think about it like this. If your brain is constantly being hijacked by fear, shame, or overwhelm, no productivity app in the world is going to help you execute consistently. It's like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. You're fighting against yourself. So how do you actually do this? Let me share a simple but powerful technique that I teach all of my clients. It's called the 2-minute reset. And it works because it directly addresses the emotional triggers that block execution. So here's how it works. First, you identify what emotion is actually present, or what emotion are you avoiding? Are you feeling the fear about hiring a team member and it going wrong? Are you having overwhelm about your to-do list? Are you having shame about past inconsistency? Just fucking name it. Just be honest with yourself. Next, you need to locate where your emotion lives in your body. Maybe it's tension in your shoulders. Maybe it's a knot in your stomach. Maybe it's tightness in your chest. Maybe it's this feeling like you can't breathe, like So then you place your hand on that area, you take 3 deep breaths, and you acknowledge the emotion without judgment. Just say to yourself, I notice I'm feeling anxious in my throat, and that's okay. Just doing that practice itself is going to bring down the weight of the emotion. And then finally, you ask yourself, what's one small step I can take right now, even with this emotion present? So if I go like this right now, anxiety. I'm just going to keep creating this video. Okay, cool. And this whole process only actually takes 2 minutes, but it's actually incredibly powerful because it breaks the pattern of emotional avoidance that's at the heart of the chaos framework. Now, one of my clients, a service provider, he was making about 25K a month, used this to completely shut down whenever he felt overwhelmed. And whenever he did feel overwhelmed before, he'd abandon his plans and disappear into Netflix or video games for hours, sometimes days. And after implementing a 2-minute reset, he was able to catch himself in that emotional state before it derailed his days. So within weeks, his execution and consistency went from 40% to nearly 80%, and his revenue and cash flow flowed as well from that. But emotional regulation isn't about managing negative emotions. It's also about creating the optimal emotional state for execution. So I like to call this state priming. And it's something every elite performer in every field uses. Before you sit down to work on important tasks, just take 20, 30, 60 seconds to prime your state. Stand up straight, shoulders back, actually smile, and your physiology directly impacts your psychology. And then you're going to remind yourself of the bigger purpose, why this task matters to your goals, visualizing this task actually being complete. And this might sound simple, but the neuroscience behind it is solid. So you're literally changing your brain chemistry to create an optimal state for execution. Now, the second step, structure creates freedom. The second step in my framework might sound counterintuitive, especially for creative entrepreneurs who value freedom and flexibility. But here's the truth. Structure does create freedom. Your mind is like a funnel. Just like in business where you have lead generation, nurturing, sales, client delivery, your brain also needs a system to process all the inputs it receives. Without structure, you're going to be constantly making decisions about what to do next, when to do it, and how to do it. And each of these decisions drain your mental energy and create opportunities for the chaos factors, CHAOS, to creep in. And the core of the structure is what I call the 90-minute power planner system. This isn't just another to-do list. It's a comprehensive approach to planning that funnels your brain and creates clear pathways for execution. So here's how it works in practice. First, you capture and collect everything in your mind through a complete mind dump. I'm talking about writing down everything that's occupying your thoughts, tasks, ideas, worries, reminder. And first time you do it, use a 20-minute timer and get it all out of your head. This is super transformative because it clears mental clutter and creates a clean slate to work from. Your brain is like a computer operating system with limited RAM. If you've got 500 tabs open, it's going to operate slower. That's what happens when you try to keep everything in your head. One client told me, I used to feel like my brain was in constant fog. After doing the mind dump, it was like somebody had turned on the light. I could actually think clearly again. Now, next, you organize and process each item from the mind dump by categorizing it into action items, calendar tasks, or what I call master actions. This master actions list isn't just a to-do list. It's categorized based on your energy levels and the type of work that you have. And most people mess this up because they store information in multiple places. Different journals, sticky notes, a whiteboard behind them, Trello boards, WhatsApp messages, emails, Slack, Notion. airtake, like just everything. Part of this process is also consolidating these tools down to just a few essential ones. But the third element is actually catching up and following up. And this is where most entrepreneurs lose money without realizing. Studies show that over 50% of sales come from follow-up. But most business owners don't even have a system for this. Now, I teach my clients to review 3 weeks back and 2 weeks forward in a calendar, identifying any opportunities, any appointments, conversations, or tasks that need follow-up or preparation. And this closes the loop on unresolved commitments that might be subconsciously draining your energy and making you feel like you're behind because you've told yourself you're going to do something and you didn't do it. Or you have something going ahead and then you let somebody down. Then you feel shame and guilt because you didn't put it in your calendar. Or you have team members that you knew that you needed to catch up with and you haven't done it and it gets delayed weeks, months, quarters, rather than just having a conversation when you needed to. Now, what was interesting about Justin's approach is that instead of creating a heavily structured calendar, we actually ended up freeing up his calendar almost entirely. So we set up a master actions list based on energy levels, not just importance. And he would refer to the weekly list rather than scheduling every hour of his day. And this more flexible approach actually worked better for his creative thinking style. So he had clear focus blocks for his strategic work, but without the pressure of rigid time slots. And this gave him both the structure he needed and the flexibility his brain craved. And that's a perfect balance that eliminated his resistance to planning and having things in his schedule. And the same thing as well, when I implemented this with my first business partner, we went from 5K to 25K a month in just 5 weeks, which is a 500% increase. And we did this by getting crystal clear on exactly what needed to happen each week and eliminated everything else. And this planning process becomes your roadmap. You're no longer reactive to whatever comes up during the week. You're proactive, playing offense rather than defense. Now, the power of the 90-minute power planner is that it integrates all these elements into one focused session that saves you hours of scattered thinking and indecision throughout the week. Another client described this as, before I felt like I was just constantly putting out fires. Now I'm building the business strategically, piece by piece. It's like I got my brain back. Now, lastly, we have the accountability systems. The final step in Neuro Productivity Framework is creating robust accountability systems. And this is where the rubber meets the road. It's often the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently. According to research from the American Society of Training and Development, you're 65% more likely to complete a goal if you commit to someone else. But if you have a specific accountability appointment with that person, your chances of success jump to 95%. And there are 3 levels of accountability I like to work with. The first is what I call mirror accountability. This is where you become accountable to yourself through visual reminders and trackers. I actually have sheets right in front of my desk, right up here, that show my weekly and monthly goals. Like, you can see it up here. I've also placed vision boards throughout my space, so it's impossible to escape the visualization of my goals. Now, when you make your goals unavoidable in your physical environment, your brain gets a message that these aren't optional. It's a simple but super powerful form of self-accountability that doesn't require anyone else. Now, once one client used a simple mirror to have their part of their goals every single day, so that they would, when they would brush their teeth, they literally had it on the mirror. And it was like, boom, it's just there. It's easy, snap, there. And then that person, which was Joanna, went from below 50K a month to 50K in a week, delegating 85% of her work and hitting a 7-figure run rate in just 30 days with me. Now, that's pretty damn fast for just mirror accountability. Now, the second level is partner accountability. I learned the power of this back in when I played rugby. We had a coach who created super strong accountability for showing up to training. And we never lost a game for 3 entire seasons. When we changed it to a more friendly coach, we didn't change it, like we changed as we grew up, but he didn't hold the team accountable. Attendance at training dropped and we started losing constantly. And the difference wasn't our skill level. It wasn't our team members. In fact, some of those players have gone on to play professionally. It was the accountability system that either pushed us to show up consistently or allowed us to slack off when we didn't feel like it. Now, for entrepreneurs, the partner accountability is crucial. I structure all my client calls on Mondays and Fridays only. This creates dual accountability. My clients know exactly when they'll see me, and I know I need to be in full leader mode on these days. This structure creates certainty for everyone. Now, the third and most powerful level is what I call structural accountability. And this is where you change your environment or create systems that make inconsistency near impossible. Now, I'll share a personal example. So for 4 years, 4 years, I struggled with going to bed on time. And I knew it was sabotaging my productivity and health, but I couldn't seem to break the habit. It didn't matter what I did, tried reading, tried new evening routines, tried telling all my friends I was going to come off my phone. But last year in Thailand, I decided to solve this once and for all. I picked an accountability partner who we're still good friends now and said, for the next 2 weeks, if I'm not off my phone by 9 p.m., I will send you $10,000. And let me tell you, oh my gosh, that habit changed damn quick. The financial stakes were high enough that my brain couldn't rationalize staying up late anymore. And what's interesting is in that time period, I learned all of the thought patterns, all of the chaos principles that had me going on and getting in my own way. And this principle applies to business as well. I had a situation with a social media manager who was falling behind on projects. And during a conversation about her accountability, I asked her, hey, if we don't get this done on time, what do you think is appropriate? Seeing as, we're literally paying you to get these things done. And she was like, maybe I shouldn't be paid for that. I was like, okay, does that sound fair enough? Like, if this was your business, would you do the same? And she was like, yeah. 3 days in, she didn't do her end of day report. And I said, hey, the end of day report wasn't done. We already mentioned about what would happen if that was done. What do you think should happen? She was like, I'm not going to be paid. And I was like, I hate to do this. Like, I hate to do this level of accountability with you, but we've got to put it in place or it's going to keep getting missed, right? And she was like, yeah. And after that, she didn't miss any more end of day reports. Done. Now, as James Clear says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fail to the level of your systems. Now, this is especially true for entrepreneurs with ADHD or anyone juggling multiple responsibilities. If you can't stay on track with yourself, how can you expect clients or team members to do so? Now, the power of this 3-step framework, emotional regulation, structure, and accountability, is that it addresses both the inner and the outer aspects of consistent execution. It's not about managing your time. It's about managing your emotions, your environment, and your commitments in a way that makes consistent execution almost inevitable. And in this next section, I'll show you exactly how this framework transformed one business owner's results, taking them from inconsistent execution and plateaued revenue to reliable growth and breakthrough performance. Now, let me show you how this framework transformed a real business owner's results so you can see exactly what's possible when you implement these 3 steps. Now, I work with Justin, who's running a service-based coaching business around YouTube, as well as a coaching business and agency. So it's all one big mesh together. And he was making around $25K a month. On paper, things looked good. He had a solid client base, he had a decent team. He bought one of his dream cars, a Ford Mustang, and he'd been in business for a couple of years, but he was stuck. Every month was a roller coaster. He'd set ambitious goals, start strong for a week, and then get pulled into client work, lose focus, ultimately miss his targets, have to manage his sales team, and it was chaos. The cycle will repeat every month. And despite working 70+ hour work weeks, his revenue had plateaued for nearly a year. When we started working together, the first thing that we identified was, what was he self-sabotaging with? What was he getting in his own way with related to chaos? And another framework that I have called FIRE. And these were showing up in his business. In our initial session, we had him completely open up about where he was at in terms of his identity, where he was at with his self-concept, his limiting beliefs, his thought patterns, what was actually getting in the way of him being successful. Then we also looked at his patterns related to the chaos framework. And one of his biggest things in the way was subconscious beliefs. He didn't feel worthy of him being successful. And that meant that ultimately, whenever he did any sort of work, he wouldn't celebrate himself. It was never enough. And that meant that he had just a massive load of resistance to going through and doing the next things that he needed to do, which was higher leverage work, and then trusting his team to go and do things. And he also didn't celebrate his team, which meant they weren't motivated to go to the next level either. Now, the first thing that we implemented was actually emotional regulation. We taught him the 2-minute reset techniques. We adjusted parts of his calendar and we adjusted things so that he could open up more freedom for himself. And he was a little bit skeptical. He was like, I don't have time for this, but he committed to trying it. Within the first week, we noticed that he was trying to jump into all these different shiny objects. He was like, hey, I want to try doing this funnel and I want to try doing this sales process. And it was like, hey, bro, we're already moving along the pathway. This is what we're going to do. Let's keep moving. And that allowed him to start creating more momentum. That allowed him to create more cash flow. And then next we implemented the 90-minute power planner system, which was interesting with Justin's approach, because rather than creating a super heavy structured calendar, we ended up freeing up his calendar almost entirely. We set up the master actions list based on his energy levels. And then from there, not just based on importance, but also referring to what he could actually delegate to his team as well. And this more flexible approach actually worked better because then he could have the freedom to do what he wanted to do in each day without feeling massive pressure, but with also knowing that everything was going to get done. So it allowed him to trust the process. And the biggest game changer was our work on an anti-procrastination plan. We identified 3 core goals for the next 90 days. Part of that was 100K a month, and systematically broke them down into weekly outputs and daily inputs. And the first time he could see actually from A to Z exactly how his daily actions connected to his vision. And we also then set up strong accountability systems. So we met each week to make sure he was getting everything going, doing everything. We had weekly check-ins. We had little bits of accountability, which was like, hey, let's get this done by then, and making sure he was super specific with that. And then he also got to bounce things off of me when he was feeling uncertain and unsure on things as well. Now, in the first 30 days of implementing this framework, his cash flow went from 25K a month to 57K a month. And he wasn't just working more hours. In fact, he was working fewer. But he was focusing on the right activities at the right time, without the emotional disruption, mental clutter, anxiety, self-doubt, and scattered focus that had plagued him before. Then something unexpected happened. After the first month of success, he decided to take a month off to go kayaking, which he wanted to do for years, but never actually felt he could step away from the business, which is helpful because that's what we did. We built the systems to allow him to do that. And when he returned, instead of the usual post-vacation slump, he was refreshed, he was focused, and he applied the framework with even more clarity. And the following month, in January, his business hit 101K a month, more than 4 times his baseline when we started working together. And what's most striking about this performance is it's not just the revenue increase, it was how his relationship with his business changed. Instead of feeling like he was constantly overwhelmed and constantly behind, he developed this sense of control and confidence. He stopped waking up with that knot of anxiety in his stomach, and he started enjoying his business again. And here's the thing, Justin isn't some unicorn entrepreneur with superhuman abilities. He's a normal business owner who struggled with the same issues you might be facing right now. The difference is that he implemented a framework that addressed both the inner and outer aspects of consistent execution. Now, I'm not promising that you'll quadruple your revenue in the next 90 days, just like Justin did. Everyone's business is different and results vary. But I am saying that when you address the real roots of inconsistent execution, the emotional regulation, the structure, the accountability, breaking through results actually becomes possible. So in the next section, I want to break down how you can actually implement this framework in your own business starting today. Now, let's talk about how you can actually implement this framework in your own business today. I want to give you a practical action plan so that you can actually take this away and go and do something, even before you've mastered the entire system. So the key here is to start small, but strategically. You don't need to overhaul your entire approach overnight. In fact, trying to change everything at once is usually a recipe for self-sabotage, overwhelm, and more inconsistency. So instead, let's just focus on the high leverage stuff. So start with emotional regulation. The single most important practice you can implement today is the 2-minute reset I described earlier. So first, here's how to make it stick. Identify your personal execution triggers. So these are specific situations that tend to derail your consistency. Is it a difficult conversation? Is it when a client emails you with an urgent request or DMs you? Is it when you face a task you're not confident about? Is it approaching finances? Is it approaching marketing plans, sales plans, website builds, whatever that is? Write down your top 3 execution triggers. Now commit to using the 2-minute reset the next time one of these triggers occur. Put a sticky note on your computer, stick up some paper like I have on my walls so that I'm visually reminded. It's the best way that you're going to cue yourself. Now the second part of this is creating your basic structure. So if you take nothing else from this video, schedule a 90-minute power planning session this Sunday morning, Sunday evening. During that session, I want you to do a complete mind dump of everything on your plate. From there, take every single mind dump action and place it into your calendar or into a master actions list. Now, with a master actions list, what this is going to look like is mapping out where is your energy best. So you're going to have proactive attention, active attention, inactive. Proactive is going to be somewhere between 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. And then active attention is probably going to be from 10 a.m. until 2. Inactive is probably going to be from around 2 till 5. 5, you might get another boost up of energy again. And that's how you should look at your tasks. Like what task is going to go in between each action item. That's going to make what task is going to go based on my energy in those times. Now, from there, we're going to then identify your top 3 outputs for the week, the results that will most directly impact your revenue. Now, once we've got the 3 key outputs for this week, map out the specific inputs required to achieve those outputs, and then decide on when you're going to do those activities. What's critical here is to be ruthlessly realistic about what you can accomplish in a week. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a month of consistent action. Now, I recommend starting with just one major output goal this week with 3 supporting input activities minimum. Now, as you build consistently, you can gradually increase these things. Now, for accountability, the easiest system to implement immediately is visual tracking. Get a calendar that you put things on and you live by. Like, I use Google Calendar. But if you feel like it's easier to map out on a big whiteboard all the lines, all your days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 to 30, then great, do that. And then decide on one key activity that, if done consistently, would make the most impact for your business growth. Maybe it's hiring one new team member, maybe not per day, but maybe it's meeting with one client each day. Maybe it's having your team member do a certain amount of outreach per day or make a certain level of sales calls, or maybe you've got to do that for where you're in business. And then you're going to mark an X on the calendar for every day you complete this activity. Your only goal here is to not break the train. And that simple visual accountability can be really, really powerful. So as you implement these initial steps, be prepared for some resistance, some obstacles. These are typically the 3 most common challenges that I can see when my clients have done this. First is the emergency excuse. There will always be fires to put out in your business. The key is distinguishing between true emergencies and urgent feeling tasks that could actually wait. When something pops up, ask yourself, will this truly matter in 30 days? If not, can probably wait until after your scheduled focus blocks. Second is the all or nothing trap. You might miss a day or have a week where you don't fully implement this system. When this happens, many entrepreneurs go into black and white thinking, where it's like, well, I've blown it now, might as well just wait until next week or month to start fresh. This is a huge mistake. The power of this framework is in recovering quickly when you get off track. If you can recover quickly when you get off track, you're going to smash it. If you miss a day, just pick up where you left off. Now, third is a complexity aspect of yourself. This is, as you learn more about productivity systems, you might be tempted to add more complicated tools and techniques. Resist this urge. The power of this framework is in its simplicity and focus on the fundamental drivers of consistent execution. You're going to master the basics before adding complexity. So in terms of timeline, here's what you can realistically expect. In the first week, you'll experience moments of clarity, control, punctuated by falling back into some old patterns. This is normal. By week 2 or 3, you'll start noticing your patterns in emotional triggers and developing more awareness before you get derailed. And by the 1-month mark, you should see measurable improvement in your completion rate of planned activities. And by 90 days, if you've been consistent with the framework, you should experience significant improvements in both your execution and your business results. Now remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's progress and building a sustainable system that works with your brain instead of against it. And the most important thing is to understand is that inconsistent execution isn't a character flaw or a lack of discipline. It's a solvable problem when you address the root causes through emotional regulation, effective structure, and strong accountability. Now, let's talk about bringing all this together and building it into a system that creates long-term change for you. So we covered a lot of ground today. I want to make sure you're walking away with absolute clarity on how to end inconsistent execution once and for all. So let's recap what we learned. First, we discovered that inconsistent execution isn't a productivity problem, it's an emotional regulation problem. So when you understand the chaos factors, cognitive overload, habituated patterns, avoidance of emotions, overcommitment, and subconscious beliefs, you can address the real roots of why you're not following through consistently. Second, we did the 3-pillar Neuro Productivity Framework that solves this problem at its core. Emotional regulation first, using the 2-minute technique, reset, to manage the emotional triggers that derail your execution. Structure creates freedom, implementing the 90-minute power planner system to funnel your brain and create clear pathways for action. Accountability systems, setting up mirror, partner, and structural accountability to ensure you consistently follow through. And then third, we looked at how this framework transformed Justin's business, taking him from $25K a month to $101K a month by addressing both the inner and outer aspects of consistent execution. And here's what makes this approach different from the standard productivity advice you might have tried before. Most productivity systems only focus on the outer game, your calendar, your task list, your notifications. That they completely ignore the inner game, the emotional regulation, the habitual patterns, and the subconscious beliefs that actually are driving your behavior. It's like trying to build a house on a cracked foundation. No matter how beautiful the house looks, it's eventually going to crumble if the foundation isn't solid. And the framework repairs the foundations first, then build structure that works for your unique brain, right, wiring it rather than going against it. Now, I want to be straight with you. Implementing this framework does require commitment. It's not a magic pill that's going to transform your execution overnight, but it is a proven system that has helped entrepreneurs like Justin and like all my other clients break through their execution problems and achieve levels of growth they previously thought was impossible. Now, if you're serious about ending inconsistent execution and you're making between 5 and 50K a month in your business, I would invite you into booking a consultation with me down below. Now, during this call, we'll identify your specific chaos factors that are causing inconsistent execution. We'll map out a plan for your business, and we'll determine if my coaching program, Neuro Productivity, is the right fit to help you implement this framework with ongoing support and accountability. Now, these calls aren't for everyone. They're specifically for action takers who are ready to stop self-sabotaging and get out of their own way once and for all. Now, if you're someone who just wants to make 5K a month and coast, this probably isn't for you. But if you do have bigger ambitions, you want to break through the 20K, 50K, or even 100K a month mark, you're tired of being held back by inconsistent execution, then I would recommend clicking the link in the description to apply for a call. Come prepared to the call with your credit card and be ready to make a decision. I don't want to waste my time or yours with Tire Kickers who just want free coaching. I'm looking for committed entrepreneurs who are ready to transform their execution and their results. Now, remember, inconsistent execution isn't just about who you are, it's about what you do. And with the right framework that addresses both the inner and the outer game, you can transform your execution and achieve the level of your business growth you've always known was possible. Now, with that said, drop a comment below and let me know which part of this framework resonated most with you. I read every comment and love connecting with this community. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.